What's going on, everybody? Good afternoon. And I wanted to go ahead and put a capper on the franchise tag stuff because the deadline was a couple hours ago. And we now have a full picture of exactly how the franchise tag was used or not used. So, you guys know about the franchise tag. I've talked about it at length in previous videos. You guys know how it works. First of all, obviously, the most interesting thing to us is that the Seahawks did not use the franchise tag, which we expected. But the Seahawks officially have not utilized their franchise tag this year. So let's take a look at the 8 teams that did and the 1 team that kind of went halfway. So, 2024 franchise tagged players included a couple of guys the Seahawks may have been interested in, like Baltimore Ravens tagging Justin Madubuike, the defensive tackle. He is definitely an interesting candidate for the Seahawks if they lose Leonard Williams. But obviously, they're going to try to avoid that. And I think we all knew that Baltimore was not going to let Madubuike or Queen out the door. They were going to tag one of those guys. So it's not terribly surprising. And that's probably the most interesting one to us Seahawks fans, all things considered. Carolina Panthers tagged Brian Burns, which, I mean, he's an edge rusher. I don't think we can take on another big-ticket edge rusher. So that doesn't really make sense. Chicago Bears tagged Jalen Johnson, good cornerback. Probably not terribly interesting here in Seattle. Cincinnati Bengals, of course, tagged T. Higgins a while ago, wide receiver. Not too interesting here. Indianapolis Colts tagged Michael Pittman, wide receiver. Not terribly interested. Jacksonville Jaguars tagged Josh Allen, edge rusher. Again, just probably a little too good to fit in with this rotation with the money we're already spending and the resources we've already spent. Kansas City Chiefs tag L'Jarius Sneed, cornerback. Not really interesting here. And then you had the Tampa Bay Buccaneers tag Antoine Winfield, safety. That would have been compelling. Maybe. I know that would have been a lot of money. I know it was a lot to ask, but Antoine Winfield would have been tough. It would have been tough to pass up the opportunity to have a guy as good as Antoine Winfield on your team, but it also would have been tough to make it work financially even after letting our safeties go today. So you can still technically acquire these players, but you're going to have to trade for them. And the raw franchise tag trade is 2 first-round picks. Now, it basically never comes to that. So what would probably happen is that you would negotiate a trade package with the team that tagged them. Like, a team is probably going to try to offer a second-round pick for Brian Burns. And I kind of expect a deal like that to get done in the next few weeks here. I think that you may see a team trade for Josh Allen because he's going to be so expensive to keep around that Jacksonville may not be able to commit that to him when they are about to have to pay Trevor Lawrence. A lot of people think L'Jarius Sneed is going to get traded because he's going to be absurdly expensive coming off the season that he just had. But I'm not really interested in trading assets on top of the money we would have to give any of these players. The money's enough. The money is tough enough to swallow. But if I have to call Tampa Bay and be like, okay, we'll give you our first-round pick for Antoine Winfield, and then we're going to give Antoine Winfield $100 million, I think I can just find a better way to expend my resources, as good as Antoine Winfield is. If Madubuike would only cost like a third-round pick, and the money you'd have to pay him, I'd still say, can I just go spend the money on a guy like Christian Wilkins? So I consider all these guys to be pretty much off the table because I'm not willing to give up the additional capital when I'm already going to have to break the bank. We also had one team use the transition tag, which doesn't get used that often. Basically, my understanding of the transition tag is that it's slightly cheaper. It's the average of the top 10, not the top 5, so it's a little bit less money, but there's no guaranteed trade capital if a team decides to take them away from you. It's right of first refusal to match or exceed the contract extended to him by another team. The Seahawks tried to get away with a transition tag on Steve Hutchinson in 2006. It backfired massively in a way that I don't think is even legal anymore, because what the Vikings did was absolutely insane. And I'm pretty sure the league has kind of legislated that out of contract negotiations now because they've realized that it was a massive hole in their in the logic of a transition tag. So I don't think you can do that anymore. But you typically don't see the transition tag brought out here because it basically just gives you right of first refusal, which in theory you should already have, unless the player really doesn't like you and really doesn't want to stay there anymore. But the Patriots used the transition tag on Kyle Duggar, a safety, so that was somebody who maybe would have been interesting because we need safeties now. Kyle Duggar was not exactly one of my favorites. He was not somebody that I was super amped on. He's going to be super expensive, I'm sure, but he would have been at least a candidate to consider, considering our need at the position. So that's it for franchise tag stuff. Again, I would consider all 9 of these players off the table now. Not interested in giving up draft capital and money for these guys. So, to me, these guys are off the table. And let's take a look at some of the guys who didn't get tagged. Adam Schefter has this list of high-profile players who are about to become free agents that could have been tagged but aren't, for one reason or another. You had Chris Jones, of course, the Kansas City guy. They used their tag on Snead. So, Chris Jones, he's going to be crazy expensive, probably too expensive. But if you lose Leonard Williams, you could certainly talk yourself into it. Christian Wilkins, who is awesome. And Miami's books are just so messed up, they can't put a tag on him. They can't afford it. So, he's going to go. And hey, if we lose Leonard Williams, he's the first guy on my list. He's my first call if we lose Leonard Williams. I'll say that. Saquon Barkley, free agent. Giants just, I think, don't really think he's worth it because of the injury history, the age, the positional value. So he's going to hit the market. No interest there personally. Josh Jacobs, same deal. No interest personally. Didn't have a good year last year. He's a running back. Michael Onwenu, I believe he's the right tackle in New England. And they tagged Duggar, so they can't tag Onwenu as well. I don't think he fits our scheme. He's one of those big 350-pound right tackles. Not interested. Baker Mayfield doesn't get the tag. Going to become a free agent. Obviously not interested. Probably going to cost more than Geno, and we've committed to Geno already, it seems. Calvin Ridley, also set to become a free agent now. Wide receiver. I'm not terribly interested. And Xavier McKinney now becomes a little compelling. He's going to become a free agent now because the Giants aren't tagging him. Maybe, but it sounds like he's going to be really expensive, man. Sounds like Xavier McKinney is going to cost a lot of money that I don't know if I'm going to throw that kind of money at a Xavier McKinney. If I'm right about his price, if he's really going to cost like 16 million, I kind of feel like at that, I'd rather give the first round pick and 20 million a year to Winfield. And I don't want to do that. So to me, it's just a little too much to give up. But he is a free agent now, and I'm sure he'll be brought up in Seahawks conversations because we're going to need safeties in the worst way. All right, so that's it for the franchise tag discussion. Seahawks do not use theirs, but 8 teams did. 1 team used the transition tag, and we now have a much better idea of what the actual free agency class will look like. See you guys later. Go Hawks. Going to be on Twitch later tonight. And yeah, the off season just about getting ready to hit.